Welcome to the Florida Gardener Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer, and today is all about our interior plants. When I started Roots Redefined, I knew I wanted Interiorscape to be part of the business. I've had the opportunity to work with resorts, coffee shops, and restaurants in South Florida doing just this. Along with plant styling, I also provide ongoing care. And boy, does that teach you a lot. It's one thing to do the install and be done, but maintaining it for years after, you really have to understand the plants and the indoor environment. So today I'm going to share with you everything I have learned while maintaining indoor plants for my commercial clients. Whether you have a few succulents on the windowsill or a full-blown indoor jungle, this episode is for you. We are going to debunk some myths, share some tips, and reveal an industry secret or two. All right, so on with the show. So number 1, there is no such thing as a houseplant. Just low light plants. I think this is important to understand. My mom will jokingly get on to me if I have a quote unquote house plant outside. That's a house plant. It doesn't belong out here. Like, what? This is where all plants originate, outside. This couldn't be more true in Florida, as many houseplants are tropical and love high humidity. Sometimes they do too well outdoors. Have you ever seen a massive pothos wrapped around a tree? Their leaves grow to be so huge, the size of your hand, sometimes even larger. I once heard someone say a good houseplant is one that dies very slowly. And I agree. Because let's face it, our sterile, dry home is not their natural environment. I don't say this to dissuade you. This is part of the fun of raising them inside. It's a beautiful challenge. And time again, it's proven that having living green friends inside our homes and places of business is linked to so many wonderful health benefits. They have a huge positive impact on our overall well-being. Unfortunately, we have become disconnected from nature, and I truly believe that indoor plants are a way of reconnecting to it. I feel more comfortable and at ease in a room full of plants than one that doesn't. Sometimes you don't even realize the impact they're making. In fact, unless you're interested in plants, you probably don't notice the positive impact. But I promise, if you were to remove the indoor palms or the vase of fresh cut flowers from the hotel you love or your apartment lobby, you would feel a difference. You may not know where it's coming from, but you would. So I hope you know I'm not trying to be a buzzkill with number 1. I'm sharing this so that if you're dealing with a problem or selecting plants, you'll have a better, well-rounded understanding. The more you know, right? Moving on to number 2. Your plants are okay without you. I recently got a call from a woman who was worried to leave her houseplants alone while out of town. She wanted to know if she should hire someone to water them while gone. I asked her how long she would be gone, and she said 5 days. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut to the chase with this one. You don't need to water your plants every day. In fact, that can actually harm them. More on that later. I have a bi-weekly maintenance schedule with my Interiorscape clients. Yes, bi-weekly. They are only watered once every other week, and they are fine. They are happy and healthy. When days are short during the winter, sometimes I'm only watering them once a month. And no, I don't use self-watering containers. They are all just in normal pots with saucers. Each home is different when it comes to insulation, temperature, etc. But chances are, no matter where you live, your home isn't as dry or consistently cool as most commercial establishments. So what I'm trying to say is if a tropical plant can make it with a bi-weekly or monthly watering schedule in that type of environment, it'll certainly be fine inside your home, which isn't as climate controlled as a building with a commercial HVAC setup. You certainly need to check in with your plants. I'm there bi-weekly no matter what, but they don't need to be coddled as much as we think. Number 3, if you're new to houseplants or you've struggled in the past, I recommend staying away from anything that is marketed as variegated, on-trend, or rare. Instead, go for a tried and true, old-school golden pothos or a basic green monstera, while a variegated monstera or pink princess philodendron is rare and exotic. It's usually more sensitive and can require special care. They aren't always as hardy as the OGs they were bred from. In addition to this, they are more expensive. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a plant collector, like there are some people who enjoy collecting rare, highly sought after plants. These plants usually require a bit more maintenance, but this type of person also takes it serious and has a whole setup for it. And I totally get that. But equate this type of plant person to the guy who is a car collector. They have some really nice muscle cars or classic cars, and they love them and baby them. Each one is different, has their own story. So I'm not talking about this person. If you're this person, please disregard the rest of number 3. I'm talking to the person who is like, hey, I see the value in having a car and appreciate one that is reliable, but I also want to be able to use it daily without much fuss. I'm talking to the Honda Accords and the Toyota Camrys of the plant world. For the person that wants and values a nice, lush green indoor jungle, but isn't particular about having the latest and greatest Hoya or a philodendron pink princess. To those people, I say, don't listen to all of these social media plant influencers, and your wallet will thank you too. Now, number 4 isn't fail-proof, but oftentimes, the hardier the leaf, if it's larger or thicker, it may be a hardier plant inside your home. Rubber plant and bird of paradise are great examples. Now, as I said, there are exceptions. The fiddle-leaf fig, for example. I personally don't think the fiddle-leaf fig is a low-maintenance plant. But another good example would be the Boston fern versus the bird's nest. A Boston fern's fronds are rather thin and delicate when you really look at them. Then you compare that to a bird's nest fern's fronds. Try to say that 5 times fast. But their fronds are almost leathery. And in my experience, a bird's nest fern does 10 times better than a Boston fern inside the home. Number 5, not understanding humidity. I want to roll my eyes at the internet sometimes because there are so many people stressing sunlight, proper watering, buy this expensive plant food. But what about humidity? I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but many of these plants are from tropical rainforests where humidity is as high as 80 to 90%. So no matter what you do, if the air isn't moist enough, the plant isn't going to be happy. Yes, you can try grouping plants together, use pebble trays, or buy a humidifier. None of these methods really work that well. The humidifier can help, but only if it's a small room and the plants are all placed right next to the machine. Why? Once again, if you're just really into having specific plants, you're a collector, okay, got it. But if you just want some houseplants, you don't need to buy all this stuff. It doesn't have to be difficult. Just like the outdoor space, right plant, right place also applies to our indoor gardens. So now you're probably wondering, well, what plants do you recommend? There are so many, but here are some of my favorites. Monstera deliciosa and Monstera andersonii, Pothos, any type, splitleaf philodendron and heartleaf philodendron, spider plants, whitebird of paradise, corn plant, ZZ plant, snake plant, and jade. If you want something a little bit more unique and funky, the polka dot begonia has actually always pleasantly surprised me. All things considered, it's pretty hardy. Now, why did these plants make the list? Because they can handle lower levels of humidity, are flexible with light exposure, and are forgiving when it comes to being over or under watered. AKA, they are low maintenance. Here are 5 plants I would absolutely avoid. Please keep in mind this is my personal opinion. You may have a totally different opinion and experience, and that is okay. But in my experience, all of the following have required extra handholding or plant expertise that the novice may not be equipped with. The fiddle-leaf fig, Boston ferns, orchids. They're fantastic outdoors, but indoors, not so much in my opinion. Delicate succulents, specifically string of pearls and string of dolphins. English ivy, tillandsias, and bromeliads. Specifically the Guzmania bromeliads. They're the ones that you see at the grocery stores all the time. Everyone brings them inside their home because they're advertised as houseplants at the grocery store. But in my experience, they really don't like it inside. And here are a few that can be successfully grown inside, but may need some help. Gotten your feet wet, you're feeling frisky, you try one of these. The African violet, anthuriums, prayer plants, and palm trees. I've had the most success with dragon palms and majesty palms when it comes to palm trees. But with all palms, it just seems like eventually you're going to deal with some type of pest issue when they're inside. It's impossible to avoid, it seems. And when it comes to plant styling, you can create a really interesting indoor room with only a few different types of plants. The trick is to switch up the size of the plant and the container. So for example, instead of having 15 different 4-inch or 6-inch plants in different pots, some in clay, others in ceramic, and they're all just clustered together on a table in the back room, instead, pick an empty corner in your living room and add a 10-inch diameter ZZ plant and a 12-inch diameter snake plant right next to each other. And maybe behind the ZZ and snake plant, you have a 14-inch diameter split-leaf philodendron on a plant stand to provide some height. Tie it all together with similar pots or baskets. I actually love the cotton rope baskets and the jute rope woven baskets. As a bonus, they also help with sound absorption. So anyway, what I do is actually leave the plants in their black plastic grower's pot. Just add a saucer inside the basket and then place the grower's pot inside on top of the saucer, and you're good to go. A taller basket allows you to be a little bit more creative and play around with the height of your plant. Add a 12-inch by 12-inch square garden paver to the base of the basket and place the plant on top. Now you have immediate height. And because the planters, aka baskets, are all similar styles and colors, you're creating a cohesive look. You can repeat this look throughout your home. I like picking 3 to 5 different plants. There is something about odd numbers. And repeat those 3 to 5 plants throughout your home in different rooms. Floor, on the countertop. Maybe you have a 6-inch ZZ plant on your kitchen counter. That complements the one in the corner of your living room. You get where I'm going with this. Adding a vertical element is key. An easy way to accomplish this is by placing a vine on a shelf and allowing it to trail. You can train the plant to grow in a certain direction or let it hang freely. You can also use a macrame plant hanger or create a green wall with wall-mounted planters. One of my favorite trailing plants for the indoors is Monstera Andersonii, specifically Andersonii. Some Monsteras don't trail, but this one does. It also looks great on a moss pole. And of course, you can't go wrong with pothos or a heartleaf philodendron, which looks similar to pothos, but has a lot of very interesting, unique varieties, all of which seem to do well inside. So if you do want to switch things up, but still keep it low maintenance, the heartleaf philodendron is for you. If you decide you're going to use a wall-mounted planter for any of these, just make sure you're not going to do damage to your wall. There are a lot of impractical planters out there. Metal planters are a big one that I see. They're eventually going to rust. So if they're on your wall, you may experience water damage to that wall. And if it's a plant that's really high up and you need a ladder to access it, just be realistic with yourself. Are you really going to commit to watering this plant? WallyGrow has a really neat collection of wall-mounted planters. That's Wally, W-A-L-L-Y, Grow, G-R-O-W. I'm not sponsored or affiliated, but they are cool because you water from the back and the drainage holes are actually at the front, not the bottom. So the water is able to feed through the plant and the container without watering your floor. I've never used them inside, but I have used them outdoors. I actually created a green wall in a shopping center with them. What I will say is if you water the planter a lot, it will eventually drip out the front, and then that water is going to make its way down to the earth or your living room floor. But if you don't overwater, you won't have an issue. I just don't care as much because I'm outside, obviously, so I'm hitting them with the hose and I'm not too concerned about it. But let me put it this way. If I was creating an indoor green wall, I wouldn't hesitate to use the WallyGrow planters. Number 6 is pests. To the best of your ability, check the plants before you buy them and bring them home. Check under the leaves and gently poke around the soil. The main culprits I notice on indoor foliage is scale and mealybugs. They are both white, tiny, and look powdery. So if you see this on a plant, don't buy it. And once you have them home, Check your plants periodically, that way you can catch any issues before they get out of control. Being proactive is key. If you see mealybugs or scale on one of your plants at home, try removing them with a damp paper towel. It's usually pretty simple. I don't use chemicals. I just wet the towel with water. They almost look like little drops of like powdered sugar from a donut. Now at work, it's a little different because, well, I'm being paid to make sure the plants look pristine. So if a plant seems off, I immediately remove it and replace it with a new one. Now don't worry, I don't throw the old plant out. I bring it to my home nursery and place it outside. Oftentimes, Mother Nature will figure it out for you. Beneficial insects will take care of the nuisance pest. Changing the soil can be helpful too, depending on the type of pest you're dealing with. And sometimes proactively spraying neem oil on indoor plants can help. Neem oil is more natural compared to many of the synthetic chemicals out on the market. Luckily, most of them don't require regular neem oil spraying. Only a handful like to give me trouble. I never spray inside. I'll bring them outside to spray. That way there's no chemical drift getting on anything. I don't do this with my personal collection, but once again, when it's a business and the plants need to look good, sometimes it's necessary. A common houseplant pest I want to spend some time talking about is fungus gnats. If you have ever seen tiny little flying bugs around your plants, there is a high likelihood they were fungus gnats. Now, although fungus gnats may be the most annoying for us humans, they swarm around and can be quite irritating, they are actually the easiest to deal with in terms of pinpointing how you got them and getting rid of them. Also cause the least amount of damage to plants. They're relatively harmless when it comes to the health of your plant compared to scale or mealybugs. Also, it's difficult, in my opinion, to pinpoint exactly why plants get scale or mealybugs. Yes, some are more prone to get them than others. So there's certain nutrient deficiencies that can play a part, etc. But there's a lot of gray area. It's not something that can always be quickly figured out. And to me, that's one of the most important things, not just getting rid of the pest, but understanding why you got it in the first place so you can avoid future outbreaks. So like I said, with fungus gnats, it's pretty easy. And that's why if I have to choose a pest to deal with, I will choose fungus gnats every time. They like consistently moist soil. That's it. If the soil is always wet and you never let it dry out between waterings, you're gonna get fungus gnats. They lay their eggs in moist soil and then they hatch and there you go. The majority of the calls I get about fungus gnats are from people that are quite literally watering their plants every day. So cool. Now we understand how you get them. But how do you get rid of them? There are many methods, but here's what I do. In order to get rid of the adults, the ones flying around, I add yellow sticky traps to the pots. You can order these online or get them at Home Depot. It's just sticky tape. They are drawn to the color yellow, and then they get stuck and die. So that's how you get rid of the adults. But you also have to kill the larvae in the soil. Otherwise, they're going to hatch, and the cycle will repeat itself. If it's just one small plant, you can just take it outside, replace the soil, fresh potting mix, dispose of the old soil, and just don't overwater in the future. But when you have a large amount of plants that are impacted, sometimes repotting and replacing all the soil just isn't feasible. What I like to do is buy some gravel, like 2 to 3 inches of it on top of the soil. Make sure you cover all of the soil evenly so that you don't see any of it. It's just gravel. And then I don't water for 3 to 4 weeks. They like moist soil, so obviously not watering is going to help kill them. But in addition, the gravel acts as a barrier. If there were any to hatch, they won't be able to make it out of the pot because the gravel keeps them trapped. They can't get out. Now, I've heard people talk about spraying like a water vinegar mix in the pots to kill the larvae, and here's my take on that method. Spraying with a water vinegar mix just hasn't ever made sense to me because even though there is vinegar in it, you're still moistening the soil, and I feel like that's not a great idea. Maybe it does work and kills some of the larvae, but I'm just not on board with it. The soil shouldn't be consistently wet. That's what got us here in the first place. So that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Number 7 is repotting as soon as you bring a new plant home. Now, this one is totally your call. If you want to immediately repot when you get home from the nursery or garden center, you absolutely can, but just know that you usually don't have to. You can leave them in the same soil and grower's pot and get a feel of how they are adjusting to your home before changing the soil. Number 8, you don't need a fancy watering can with a long, thin gooseneck style spout. I love using old almond milk jugs for watering. I'll either harvest rainwater and then pour it into the milk jugs, or I'll directly pour tap water into the almond milk containers, but let it air out for 12 to 24 hours to remove the chlorine before placing the cap back on for future use. Number 9, you don't always have to pot up. If you pot up, that's more room for the plant to get larger. Of course, if you want it to get bigger, then go for it. But if you don't want the plant to get bigger, why would you do this? Ever heard of bonsais? If the plant is root bound, you can just give it a haircut. Trim the roots, change out the soil, and put the plant back in the same pot. Number 10, over-fertilizing. Yes, they are in pots, so nutrients are unlimited, but you don't need to necessarily be on a strict fertilizing schedule. Just listen to your plants. If they're happy and healthy, they probably don't need to be fed. Number 11, skip the designated houseplant section at the garden center. Houseplants are usually cheaper if you don't buy them from I'm going to call it the designated cute houseplant corner of the garden center. Seriously, they'll sell you a small monstera or ivy for $30 in a hanging basket or a white ceramic pot. Or you can head over to the outdoor landscape foliage part of the garden center, where they have low-light plants for a shady area of your yard, essentially, and buy that same monstera in a black plastic grower's pot for half the price. Same plant will do the same thing, just one is marketed for the uninformed indoor plant enthusiast, and the other is marketed for the contractor. Life hack, you're welcome. And FYI, this won't work if you want a specific variegated fancy house plant. Contractors usually aren't planting those in the landscape because they aren't hardy and they're expensive. But for your basic philodendron or snake plant, this will definitely save you money. Number 12 is rotating. I move a lot of plants around for my clients. There is a bi-weekly rotation, ensuring everything gets enough sun. At home, you don't need to do this as frequently. Monthly may be enough. And our last one, number 13, is don't be too hard on yourself. One of the biggest industry secrets, what you don't know, is that plants are being swapped out all the time, or they're just cutting off all the browning and crunchy parts of the foliage. Yes, I saw this firsthand inside Disney's Polynesian Resort. In the center of the lobby, they have huge palm trees covered in beautiful, colorful orchids, and the tips of the palm frond leaves are clearly cut. A trick is to cut the palm frond leaves at an angle so that it isn't as noticeable. If you really start to pay attention, you'll notice that even your favorite places don't have quote-unquote perfect plants. And to me, that's what makes it so beautiful. They are alive and ever-changing. And just like us, they have good days and bad days. I have a Tillandsia arrangement in a large, open, geometric-shaped terrarium. Super cute, but you better believe those Tillandsias are swapped out every other week. The old ones are then placed outside in my home nursery so that they can get nice and healthy before heading back indoors to be on display again. And then I have another client with succulents on all the outdoor tables and some inside around the bar. Same deal. I'm there bi-weekly, switching out any that need to be taken care of at my home nursery. Bring backups that are ready to go and fill in. All right, that wraps up episode 10 of The Florida Gardener. We will see you next week for episode 11. And in the meantime, if you'd like to download one of my Etsy garden templates, purchase seeds, or check out my social, you can access everything through my website, rootsredefined.com. That's roots, R-O-O-T-S, redefined, R-E-D-E-F-I-N-E-D.com. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you again real soon.